I would like to thank the Five Star Movement for the opportunity of highlighting my books, particularly the current work, Israel's Betrayal of the Holocaust for Nukes, which is indispensable for understanding what is going on right now. You have all of this worldwide interest in the Iranian nuclear program. Let's ask a question. How did Israel obtain its nuclear program? Israel betrayed the Holocaust for nukes. This is about the cover up of Nazis for German money for nuclear weapons and subs from Germany from Ben Gurion to Netanyahu. Germany paid for Israel's nuclear reactor at Dimona and supplied the submarines from which Israel can launch missiles against Iran. And they didn't do this from the kindness of their heart. They made sure that Israel did not expose the thousands of war criminals in West Germany, and Israel did not denounce even a single Nazi war criminal in West Germany in the 1950s and 60s and thereafter. And that's what this book is mostly about. It's indispensable because it tells you the other side of the story about how Israel violated every tenet of human rights in order to get its nuclear arsenal and the German submarines from which to launch the nukes. Now, of course, you're saying, how is it possible that such a story was never told? You have all of these movies, you have all of these magazines, articles, newspapers, TV programs, giving the impression that Israel has left every stone unturned to uncover the Nazis who killed the 6 million Jews. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Now you say to me, well, is this some unique thing? No. Let's take, for example, my book on Mussolini's crimes. Mussolini murdered 1 million people in Libya, Ethiopia, Greece, and Yugoslavia. And the British covered it all up after World War II to prevent a communist government or any left-wing government in Italy, because the war criminals were seen as reliably anti-communist. That story was left untold. Still, I've been working on it for years, trying to get publicity out. The Italian government and other governments, British governments, have been working against me. So it's very difficult to get new information. I know I submitted this manuscript on Israel's cover-up of Nazis to a guy who advertised himself as the leading literary agent for nonfiction books, mostly history, actually. And he thought it was fascinating, but he couldn't get involved in something like this because all of his authors, or many of his authors who support Israel, would withdraw from his literary agency, and the publishers would give him a hard time because of the pressure from the pro-Israel lobby. So it's a difficult story, and it's a difficult story to get any new information out. And this is what I've spent my life trying to do. I mean, Mussolini's, the myth of benign Italian fascism. That's the book. Now, all of my books, The Myth of Benign Italian Fascism, this book about Israel's cover-up of Nazis, and also the work on the 1948 Nakba, which includes the story of Israel's expulsion of 60,000 Palestinians from Gaza. That book is indispensable for understanding what's going on in Gaza. The book on Mussolini's atrocities is absolutely indispensable to understand the current myth of our planet in Italy and in the Trump in the US, that Mussolini was something different from Hitler. And of course, now we have Israel's cover-up of Nazis. And it's not just that. I've been working for years to get out the story of 200 million below untouchables in India. You say, well, I've heard of untouchables. No, you haven't. You've heard of untouchables, but you haven't heard of the 200 million people below untouchable in India, which the government of India works night and day to prevent people from knowing about that. I could write a whole book not only about the below untouchables, but about my exploits with Indian security. Basically, there are all kinds of stories in the world dealing with subjects that various governments don't want us to know about. And believe me, their security agencies play hardball. I'm the guy who can tell you about that. Now, some of what is in the book, Israel's Cover-Up of Nazis, was in my Faber book. I have a previous Faber book on the Palestinian catastrophe, which is the basis of 1948 Nakba. This book is, to some degree, based on my book on the Waldheim files, Myth and Reality. The Waldheim case is, at least in my experience, very closely related to Israel's cover-up of Nazis. When you read the book, you'll understand that. I'm a person who was very much involved in trying to uncover the story, and I suffered from persecution by Mossad. My life was threatened. This is a very sensitive subject. But however, the world is changing. I just saw a TV. Somebody was on saying that on TV news program that in the next 10 years the world's attitude towards Israel will change. Well, now it's beginning to change. So some of it, maybe it's time that we found out right now how Israel got its nuclear program going by covering up Nazis. Now, this all goes back to the 1952, the first agreement that Israel made with the Nazis who controlled West Germany after World War II was the 1952 reparations agreement. And then later on, you have the nukes, what I call the Nukes for Silence agreement in 1960. And that was a famous meeting between Ben-Gurion, the prime minister of Israel, and Chancellor Adenauer of Germany. But the guy who was really running the show in Germany, Adenauer was well into his 80s and well past his prime, was Hans Glubke. Hans Glubke was the man who, during the Hitler era, had worked on the Nuremberg laws, which set off the Holocaust. So he was interested in giving money and technical assistance to Israel to work on its nuclear program in Dimona in the desert, in the Negev desert. But of course, he insisted that there be no publicity. Israel worked in the other direction to cover up all of the Nazis, including himself and all of the cronies he had appointed in various positions in the Israeli government. Now, this is not a story of just villains, Germans and Israelis. There are heroes, and the heroes are the Jewish, not all Israelis, some Israelis, other Jews who opposed the Nukes for Silence agreement. One of them was Isser Harel, who was the head of Mossad, and what he did was he abducted Adolf Eichmann, you may have heard of him, in Argentina, hoping that he would go on trial. And during this trial, all of the Nazis in West Germany would be revealed. And of course, there would be no Nukes for Silence agreement. The Germans would cancel any promises they made to finance Dimona if Hans Glubke and the other Nazis were mentioned in the Eichmann trial. Now you say, well, I saw the Eichmann trial on television. No, you didn't see Eichmann trial on television. You didn't see the Eichmann trial in movies. I'm telling you the real story, okay, which is well documented. Now, what you have to understand is a lot of what I have researched has recently been corroborated by historians in Israel in various articles and one or two books in Hebrew but of course, they're not allowed to publish this type of information in English for worldwide consumption. So in the book I mentioned, I don't try to steal their work. I give credit to the Israeli historians who have been working on this. Their work and my work really dovetails, and we can now tell the real story. So the hero of the story are not just Isra Harel, but all of the other Jews I can't mention right now. I was privileged to meet one of these people, to get to know him later on. And this was an American Jew. Well, he was originally from Romania, Charles Kramer, and he was pretty angry with the Israeli government for not going after the people who murdered his relatives in Romania. Now, I can't go into you can write a book alone just about the Eichmann trial, the true story of the Eichmann trial, rather than the nonsense in the movies and on other books. I also consider the JFK assassination and the new evidence, which suggests that Israel may have been involved. Don't forget, JFK was opposed the construction of Dimona. He was on that case, and the Israelis were very, very worried that JFK would now make public announcements, withdraw American support, and so on, so that Dimona would not be possible. Now, so I think that Israel might be listed along with the mafia and the American military-industrial complex as suspects. The usual suspects for the Kennedy assassination are the mafia and the military-industrial complex, the CIA. Yes, I believe they all work together. I believe at the very least, Israel was informed about what was going on. I think the evidence would support such an assessment. Because the military-industrial complex and Israel, the pro-Israel lobby, are the two most important power structures. And in those days, the mafia was pretty important in the United States. Kennedy's problem was he made everybody angry. He made the mafia angry, he made Israel angry, and he made the CIA, military-industrial complex angry. He made everybody angry. All the people who had the real power at that time wanted to get rid of him. So it's a matter of, we have the question of Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby was the guy who eliminated the assassin of Kennedy, Oswald, and he said, "I did it for the Jews." Okay, so we have all of this evidence on that. The exact apportionment of blame between mafia, military-industrial complex, and Israel, maybe someday we'll know. Now, so that's another fascinating tale that is told in my book, For the First Time, the Truth. And now, of course, we have the question of new evidence that is surfaced in Israel about what really happened in 1973, where Israel came very, very close, probably much closer than we previously thought, to using nuclear weapons in 1973, when it looked like the Arabs might actually win, at least for a few days, during the 1973 war. Moshe Dayan really, it seems like he really did want to, the defense minister really did want to use nukes against the Syrians and Egyptians. And of course, the Russians had nukes in the Middle East, and it would have sent off a chain reaction, resulting in a nuclear war. Every time I go back to that aspect of my book, I think of what's going on right now. And don't forget, Israel has these German submarines manufactured in Germany with the nuclear weapons to strike at Iran. Would they be crazy enough to do it? I don't know. I mean, they seem to have been pretty close to doing it in 1973. Now we have also the issue of Vanunu. Vanunu was a guy who in the 1980s spilled the beans on Israel's nuclear program, and he was, he's lauded as a great whistleblower. whistleblower. Of course, to me, Vanunu was no whistleblower. Vanunu was a dupe. Vanunu was a guy who Israel allowed to release certain information to frighten the Middle Eastern countries. You know, what good is having nukes unless you can frighten your enemies with them? And Vanunu really played a very crucial role in that. I remember Vanunu's brother called me, wanted me to write a book about Vanunu. And I said, look, I'm not going to write a book that makes your brother look like a hero. I'm going to tell the truth. And I'm going to say that Israel knew very well what he was, information he wanted was going to release. They wanted it released to frighten the entire Arab world. And they said, how did you find that out? How do you know? And I says, well, you just told me. And you see, that's the way, that's one trick of the trade. There's all tricks of the trade, you see, of what you have to do in order to get information. One thing is you meet people and you throw things out and see what kind of reaction you're going to get. And now the Israelis got subs from Germany in the 1980s, 1990s. As I say, these are the subs with which they are currently threatening Iran and other countries at various points. They've used these subs, and that is an invulnerable weapon system. Then the Germans weren't so stupid, you know. The Germans sold them the submarines, but they insisted that they had to be refitted in Israel in order to use the nuclear missiles. You see, the Germans wanted deniability. You know, even when Prime Minister Ben-Gurion and Adenauer were negotiating in 1960, and all the information I have and all the information that the people in Israel seem to have uncovered suggest that these Adenauer and Ben-Gurion pretended to each other that Dimona was for desalinization rather than a nuclear facility. Imagine these two guys sitting in a room, three old guys pretending. Each knows what the true story is. They're trying to BS each other. Oh, this is about a desalinization plant. Oh, we'll give you the money for that. And it's the way the world is. What are you going to do? The world is corrupt. And so my own personal involvement came a little bit later, about the time of the submarines. In 1979, I discovered the 35,000 United Nations war crimes file. Now, I did not know, despite the claims of various security agencies who were on my case, I did not know. I got into those files by pretending to be a young assistant to Kurt Waldheim, the Secretary General, without knowing that one of the files was against Oberleutnant Waldheim when he was in Hitler's army. And what was his job? See, I told everybody I'm trying to find evidence of Italian war crimes in the Balkans. Waldheim, the Secretary General, spoke fluent. Well, he wasn't secretary; he was just a senior lieutenant at the time of World War II. Spoke fluent Italian, so he was liaisons with the Italian Second Army in the Balkans, and he reported. So now, just realize the coincidence of this. I am telling everybody I want to find out about Italian war crimes in the Balkans, and the people in Israel and so on, the diplomats I was speaking to and so on, and the Yugoslavs, they all knew the truth. Waldheim was the guy who was making the reports. I was in effect telling them I want to see the reports, German reports of Italian war crimes made by Waldheim without mentioning Waldheim's name. Then we say, oh, this guy thinks he's smart. No, I didn't think I was smart. I didn't know. And even when I found, documents indicating that Oberleutnant Waldheim made the reports, you see the German system, he didn't sign Kurt Waldheim. He just signed Oberleutnant Waldheim. So these United Nations war crimes files were about Mr. Waldheim, important in the Waldheim case, important about Italian war crimes, my research on Italian war crimes, but the Israelis, I went to the Israelis with help to ask to open up. They had all this information. See, they have 200 million documents in Yad Vashem, a Holocaust research in Israel. Those 200 million documents were never used to go after the Nazis. It was used for blackmail. They not only blackmailed the Germans, this is also in my book, they blackmailed the French collaborators in World War II. They really have been having a hell of a time using war crime information to blackmail people all over the place. Now, when I went to the Israelis looking for help, they were very suspicious. What is this guy really doing? Is he really looking for Waldheim? Does he know that we're blackmailing Nazis? I got a half page in the New York Times about the UN war crimes files, and then an Israeli ambassador called me up and threatened me. He didn't want any further research on this subject, and he said the magic words, "We know where you are." Oh my God. You see, they had been tapping, Mossad had been tapping my phone. They had been going around asking questions about me, trying to frighten me. Family and friends wouldn't go near me. There was under suspicion from the CIA. Oh, it was a mess. Believe me, I could laugh now, but I wasn't laughing then. Believe me, you don't want the CIA and MI6 and Mossad and KGB. KGB also had Waldheim's file. All these security agencies on your case. It's not a pleasant life. It's not a pleasant life. Yeah, as I say, I can laugh about it now. Now, afterwards, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, different Israeli ambassador, this guy was called, you may have heard of him, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. He publishes an article in the New York Times that there's some crazy guy. Of course, he wouldn't give me publicity using my name, going around claiming Israel has access to these files. That's all, that's all impossible. Of course, it was accepted as fact at that time. In those days, anything in the New York Times inspired by the Israeli UN mission was accepted as fact. I mean, nobody would dare to challenge it. Now, I want to make a 2-hour documentary on this subject. DW is very interested, but I need a documentary filmmaker. They don't want to make it themselves. They just say, we'd like to see it. If you can get yourself a documentary filmmaker, we'd love to see it. So anybody out there who knows a documentary filmmaker, please put them in contact with me. We could get this on DW or BBC or some other international outlet. There's all sorts of ways of getting it all over the world nowadays. And there would be enormous interest in it. I also would like to do a documentary on all kinds of other subjects, such as Schindler, the war criminal Schindler. He showed up at the Eichmann trial, and it was at the Eichmann trial that they got the brainstorm of using Schindler as a good Nazi. He was a terrible war criminal. Did he save Jews? Well, we have evidence he saved a few people by getting paid. I mean, he was out for money. He worked for Abwehr, the German Nazi intelligence organizations, and they made a fantasy that he was a righteous Gentile and all of that. All fitted up. See, that was part of Israel's campaign to brown up to the Germans by having a good Nazi. See, he's a good Nazi. It's a fascinating story. I'd love to make a documentary on that. That would be great. Now, I would also like to make a TV movie, or I have enough evidence for a 6-hour TV docudrama series. And how would this be possible? Very simple. If anybody out there knows a movie producer, TV producer, Italian or German or whatever, put them in contact with me. Who would be in it? Of course, all of these movie stars who have come out in support of the Palestinians, all of these movie stars who have criticized Israel's attack on Iran. Oh my God. I filled up, in this documentary series that I write. I'm not a screenwriter, it's just a rough draft. We need a real screenwriter. But the point is, there's 31 men and 17 women. Yeah, a lot of women were involved. You'd be surprised how many women were involved in this, both good guys and bad guys. Okay. A lot of good guys, a lot of bad guys. And this series, What Price Israel, would tell the story of the expulsion of the Palestinians in 1948, expulsion of the Palestinians in 1968, and Israel's cover up of Nazis. Okay. And as I say, maybe some of these stars, Andrew Garfield, Brian Cox, I see John Cusack as a near perfect Moshe Dayan. Of course, he'd have to have a patch over one eye. Maybe he would be a little bit uncomfortable, but he might. Let's see if these Hollywood stars will put their money where their mouth is. Let's see if they're willing to work a little bit for a little bit less on a TV series or a TV movie or even a movie for theatrical release without charging their usual fee. And as I say, I have slots, characters, 31 male, 17 female, and 2 children. I don't know yet. The only ones I haven't cast are the children. I don't know who that would be. But Tilda Swinton would be another person. She would make a wonderful character in this. I have several possible roles for her, including Golda Meir, the Israeli prime minister, who hated the Palestinians. Hugo Weaving would make a perfect Harry Truman, and so on and so forth. Brian Cox, I have a tremendous spot for him in the film. So everybody should go out, and all of my books are on Kobo, Kobo, Kobo. It's Canadian, so if you don't want to contribute to Trump's economy, that's fine. Go to Kobo, 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 and all my books there. I haven't got time to talk about all of my books. Now, the problem is, if you read all of my books, I have 4 books on Kobo. I'm going to put another one on hopefully soon, 5 books. If you read all 5 books on Kobo, you will have a problem. You will become so intelligent that you won't find anybody smart enough to talk to. That's what happens to people who read my book. Now, if you're willing to sacrifice your social life by being too smart for everybody around you, read these 5 books, well, 4 books now, 5 books. There's got to be actually more on Kobo by me. Remember, originally, two of these books were originally published by Faber and Faber. I've added like 100 pages to each one, all kinds of new information on the 2 books that I published with Faber. Another book I published with Bloomsbury. That's the Harry Potter. So these are 2. They originally were published by 2 of the top publishers in the world, Bloomsbury and Faber. But of course, I've added in each case a tremendous amount of brand new information not found anywhere else in any other book. It's an education to read these books, I assure you. So go out, buy all the books, put a documentary filmmaker in contact with me, put a TV producer, put a movie producer in contact with me, and I think everybody in this will be a much better world. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.